Welcome to Reframe Your Mindset for Success. With me today is Janine. How are you today, Janine?
I'm very well, thanks for having me on, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm really good. It's a Friday, so can never complain. Looking
Friday,
forward.
yeah. It's been a
Looking
while,
forward.
hasn't it, since we saw each other? So yeah,
That-
all good.
That's right. Yeah. So, and been a while since we last were speaking. You've moved over to Vietnam, so massive life change there. What have you been up to this week?
What have I been up to? Good question. Well, I've just got back to Vietnam. So yeah, as you know, I moved here from the UK to Vietnam in November. But around over Christmas and New Year, I stayed in Ho Chi Minh City with a friend, which was brilliant. We went to some cool places. And then from there, I've been we're at the end of January now. I've been traveling around Thailand for the last few weeks. A bit of work, bit of play. I've had a friend who was out on holiday in Thailand. So met him for a week. We stayed in a really nice spa, and then I've just been in Bangkok for a few days, and I got back this afternoon. So this podcast is timed really well. You caught me just in time. So yeah, I'm back in Vietnam now, back home, shall we say? Which still sounds strange, still feels surreal to be honest, because it's only been a few months, but it's yeah, really exciting times ahead. I guess it's really good. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I guess you're looking forward to a rest this weekend then after all those travels.
Yeah, gonna chill out, I think, regroup and but it's not been too much hardship. There's been some fun, some work, just mixing it up, well, like I like to do with life.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So as you know, with the podcast, I always start with your story. So it's a kind of over to you in as many words as you want to tell it.
Yeah, sure. So I run a company called Change for Success. So I work in the wellbeing area, work with wellbeing mindset, and yeah, so I help clients and corporate clients, and individual clients, help reduce stress, help improve resilience. I work with mental health, so things like depression, stress, anxiety. So I work with corporate clients and individual clients, and I set that business up back in 2014.
Yeah.
Um, but prior to that, I was in a really, really super stressful job. I used to work with high risk offenders for many years, men in prison throughout the UK. I was based in Liverpool, and I worked in some, quite deprived areas of Liverpool. The men, it was all men that I worked with. The men that I worked with, you name it, I worked with them.
Yeah.
Murderers, lifers, robbers, drug dealers, sex offenders, domestic abuse offenders. And it was a job I wanted to do too for many years, but prior to that, I was saying earlier, I was cabin crew, so I went from a flight attendant to working with people in prison. That wasn't that much different actually to night flight Tenerife or working with men in prison. I'll let you be the judge of that. Anyway, not that there's anything wrong with Tenerife, but yeah. Um, so yeah, I did that for a number of years. But the minute I got into that job, I noticed so many people who were burnt out. You
Yeah.
know, massively high caseloads, people off on long term sick. And after my training, I remember kind of saying to myself, this isn't a job I want to do forever. Anyway, fast forward, I got involved in a relationship. We actually got married, and that relationship became very abusive. In a lot of ways, a lot of emotional, psychological abuse. And my dad had not long died, and my mental health really suffered with a mixture of the job, being in this
Yeah.
relationship, and it was, yeah, a really, really difficult time. So, and I've talked about this openly for years. I like to raise awareness around domestic abuse, because I was found myself in a situation where I was in an abusive marriage, but I was also working with men and, advising them different types of abuse and how victims suffer and all these kind of things. So I've been very open about talking about that over the years.
Yeah.
Finally managed to leave that relationship after many attempts. And yeah, I was on the floor basically, no confidence, no self-esteem, stressed out. The doctor had signed me off work for some period of time, and yeah, I'd not really told many people about what was happening, because there was a lot of shame and guilt and everything else. But I told a couple of close friends, and one friend in Liverpool actually said to me, she said, "Well, you need to go and see this therapist. He's amazing, and he's the best in Liverpool." But I was very resistant to going. I thought I can sort my own shit out. I'm a strong, independent woman. I can, but begrudgingly, I kind of, went along, and because I was just at the depths of despair. I couldn't really
Yeah.
face my life. I've been signed off work. Yeah, I wasn't in a good place. Looked about 10 years older than I do now, and this was over 10 years ago. Yeah, so I went to see this therapist, and what he taught me just changed my life. And my background was in psychology anyway. Working with offenders in prison. But yeah, I learned so much about how our minds work, how I could, change my whole belief structure and everything like that. And it totally transformed my life. And back then, I do a whole talk on it called How One Word Changed My Life. And it was a conversation we had. And it actually allowed me to just make a U-turn and just get away as far as possible. And that's why I just decided to book a ticket to a flight to Bangkok, and I flew out to Vietnam. I was out in Vietnam for hence the Vietnam connection. So I was out here for about 3 or 4 weeks, just traveling, getting away as far as possible, told so many people my story. And I came back and I retrained as a hypnotherapist, NLP, and EFT practitioner. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, otherwise known as tapping, which some people might not have heard of that. There are more people knowing about it now. And then I went on to study Masters in Clinical Psychology. I got some research published, and I set the business up back in 2014 because I really wanted to just teach and, help other people and be in a place where I got to myself. And I guess that's how Change for Success was born. Set it up, built the business up over time. And I genuinely love what I do with a passion. I love seeing clients who, a lot of clients aren't in a good place. They've suffered with stress and fear and anxiety and, lack of confidence and self-esteem and low self-worth for many, many years. And when we see change, you know this yourself, don't you? Because what you do, when we see change, sometimes in a session or two, or, a very short space of time, when I see that change, and then clients make such huge leaps in their life, and it's just the most rewarding feeling. And then, as I say, when I'm working with corporates and organizations and helping them to be happier and more resilient and more productive, and then of course that allows them to, feel better in the workplace, take less time off, and that affects everyone in a positive way, from the company to the individuals. So I genuinely love what I do because this transformed my life. I was at a dead end. I was trying to leave this. I had left this abusive marriage, but the guy was still, I couldn't get rid of him. He was turning up. He was on the phone. He was texting, and having to manage this job as well. So yeah, that was a huge turning point for me. And, that's why I decided to set up the business, and here we are. Yeah, all good.
It's an amazing story, from what you've experienced to, having that conversation. It really reframes your mindset, and
Yeah.
at the same time, to such difficult times for you.
Yeah. You're right there, what you say, because it's like what you teach, isn't it? Reframe it. That was it. It just reframed that. Just having that conversation, it was like ping. It was literally, Paul. It was like a light bulb going off. I was like, oh, and if we didn't have that conversation, I wouldn't have. I'm telling you now, I would have gone back to work. I wouldn't have gone to the doctors. I probably would have gone back to my ex-husband. We had this conversation. It was a total reframe. The conversation we had. I won't spoil it for the listeners for the word. It's called How One Word Changed My Life, because I don't want to any spoilers. If anyone wants to go and see it, I'm sure there'll be a link in the comments, whatever. But yeah. Reframed that completely. And then it was almost like, it's like building blocks, isn't it? The one way in which you reframe your mindset, one way in which you build on a block, then another, and it just becomes a whole, not a new me, because it's the same me deep down. I have the same personality, but I'm able to feel confident. I couldn't have done something like this 10 years ago. I couldn't have had a conversation, with somebody. I couldn't have got up in front of, hundreds of people to talk or deliver seminars or programs, or I couldn't have got up in front of probably one or two people, So yeah, a total reframe. And then the building blocks on top of that, which have just been phenomenal. And then, being in a privileged position like yourself to be able to work closely with clients who've struggled for decades, and then to see the light. I'm just thinking of some clients on the top of my head. So some clients I started, 2 clients I'm just thinking of, started working with them both a similar time ago, about 3 or 4 months ago. Both were very skeptical. One had been sent by his his employer, his boss, somebody else, had seen my work and said, I'm interested in exploring this. And to see that transformation, this has literally been in the space of a few weeks, Paul, so to be
Yeah.
able to see that for myself and just to see these, amazing clients to make amazing changes, see their lives transform, to go from high anxiety to no anxiety, no confidence to feeling the best version of themselves. And then they attract all this amazing stuff, relationships, a ton more money, happiness or health, all these things that they then bring into their life as a result. It's the most rewarding feeling. I'm so passionate about it. It's fabulous.
Yeah, no, it's, I know you touched on the kind of theme there. Once you get in that type of mindset and you create that type of energy, then it's the law of attraction, isn't it? It's that you start to attract much better things into your life as well at the same time. And
Yeah, yeah.
Janine, you mentioned there that you got into therapy and it's EFT, so tapping. So
Mhm.
if you were to explain that, because a lot of people won't know what that is and how it works.
I'd love to explain it. So yeah, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, otherwise known as tapping. So the best way I can describe it is like acupuncture without the needles. I've never had acupuncture. Have you ever had acupuncture? You had it?
Recently, because of sciatica. So
Oh,
yeah,
how was
but
it? How
yeah,
did it go? Oh,
quite an unusual experience. Because
right.
after
Mhm.
after I had it, she said you'll feel a little bit giddy, when you get up, and it really
Yeah.
did. It's like
Ah,
it's
there you
really
go.
unusual
Yeah.
feeling after
But
you've
it
had
means
it.
it's doing its work. Yeah. It's
It,
doing
it
the work, though, isn't it?
yeah, it was, it's just what I needed at the right time with the massage as well. So yeah,
Yeah, no, perfect. So I've never had acupuncture, but yeah, the best way I can describe this is like acupuncture without the needles. So it's a modern talking psychology combined with an ancient acupressure therapy. So you're actually physically tapping on certain what we call meridian points around the face and upper body
yeah,
while talking through whatever the issue is. And this is the most amazing reframe tool you can come across, because what this does now, it does look very bit strange at first. Now I do this all the time with clients, for myself. What I do like about it as well is it's a great self-help tool. So I could, work with a client or explain, in detail how we use this. We could use it really in depth in session, but then the client can go away and use it for themselves, which is what I love about it. I like to work in a holistic approach. So we're working in session. Then if I'm not there, if we're working together on a Monday and then I don't see that client and they're stressed out with something on a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday when I'm not around, they've got these wonderful tools that they can use. They can pull a tool out of the kit. Right, I'll go and use a bit of tapping. So it does look strange at first. I was so skeptical. I was the most skeptical person ever, but started like, I thought, God, there must be something to this. I'm feeling better about myself. I'm feeling more relaxed. I'm feeling stress free. The negative thoughts are just kind of ebbing away. So yeah, it does a few different things, but we tap on these certain points, and there's a lot of scientific research, there's a lot of evidence behind this, which is what I like. I like neuroscience. I like this to be evidence-based techniques. And what the science tells us, when we actually start tapping on these certain points around the face and upper body, it actually lowers cortisol.
yeah,
So one of the main, there's been hundreds of research published now. I'm part of the research, which I'm very proud to admit. We were talking about that off air. I conducted some research. We got published in 2020. So 2020 gave me something. Wasn't great for some of the business, because
yeah,
obviously things changed a lot, didn't they then? So there's a lot of research, but what the research shows us, I'll give you an example of a study. So there's a study conducted back in 2012, which has been replicated. It was replicated a couple of years ago. And what they did was they had a group of participants, a control group, and they had another group who had a standard kind of talking therapy for an hour. And then they had a group of participants who had the emotional freedom technique, the tapping. Okay, so they all had an hour. And what they did was all the groups, they took saliva samples from the groups before and after the therapy.
yeah,
So what they were doing was they were measuring the levels of cortisol. So cortisol is the stress hormone. We emit more cortisol when we're stressed, when we're anxious, when we're in fight or flight, what it's called, when we're in fear, when we're in resentment, worry, upset, all this kind of stuff. We emit more cortisol, adrenaline. And don't get me wrong, a bit of cortisol is great, a bit of adrenaline, if you need to, obviously you go and run a race or prepare for a job interview, or but if we're running cortisol for our body regularly, which the science shows us we are doing, we become addicted to it. It's not a good place. It leads to stress, it leads to overwhelm, it leads to health implications, all a myriad of issues and complications. So then what they did, so they measured the cortisol, saliva samples before and after, and what they found in the tapping group, there was a significant reduction in the level of cortisol.
Yeah.
And as I say, that has been replicated. Lots of other research, but that is quite a famous piece of research. So when we actually start tapping on these points, it sends a calming signal to the part of the brain called the amygdala. So it gets us to a nice place where we feel more calm and in a more relaxed space. But the whole reframe the mindset part, which I really like, and this is what the science shows us, when, as you know yourself, when we go into an old program or an old behavior, it's usually going back to, for me, it will usually go back to what we call limiting beliefs that are keeping us stuck. So I'm not confident, or I'm not a success, or nobody likes me, or life is hard. Now, these are all just beliefs. They're not true. They're just stories we make up about ourselves. But it becomes that embedded, doesn't it? It becomes that, that kind of habitual, because we're thinking and feeling these thoughts over and over. It becomes the neurons fire and wire, and it becomes a hardwired program. What the science shows us, when we start tapping, we can get right into these kind of ingrained beliefs that are connected to anxiety or worry or fear or confidence, whatever that is. And it actually rewires the brain, which I think is phenomenal. And I could talk for hours about the success stories that we've had. People with severe anxiety where they can't leave the house because they're having multiple panic attacks a day. 3 months gone.
Yeah.
And I would have been like that with a client. Oh, how are these panic? Can't remember the last time I had a panic attack. That client would have been happy with one a day. They were having multiple. Check in a year later. I check in with a lot of clients over Christmas. They'll message me. I'll message them. All clients gone by. And you just like to keep in touch. Work together a year ago. How's things? Amazing. I've moved to London. I've just landed my dream job. How's the anxiety? Isn't a thing. Like, this is how powerful this is.
Yeah.
People with clinical depression, people with severe stress and trauma. So yeah, it's very, very powerful, even though it looked weird. When you work with I've been teaching this and working with this now for just over 10 years. So when you work with a seasoned practitioner, get right to the root of those beliefs and issues, the things that we can change are phenomenal. Because I always kind of say, with the mindset thing, reframing our mindset, we're kind of born a clean slate, aren't we? We're not born saying, oh, I'm not confident, or I'm scared of XYZ, or we pick this stuff up along the way, and then it becomes embedded as a core belief. I'm not good enough is a very common one that I hear.
Yeah.
So I always kind of say, if we learn something, we can unlearn it. If we use the term neuroplasticity, the brain isn't fixed. The brain is plastics malleable. We can move this stuff around. So I always say that's the good news. We don't need to suffer with stress for decades. We don't need to struggle with lack of confidence or lack of self-belief. We can be whoever we want to be. In the quantum field, there are infinite possibilities. So, but we stay small. Like you say, going back to that law of attraction thing. If we're in a state of constant fear, not constant, well, we might be fear, worry, anxiety, for example. Guess what we're going to attract more of, because we're in a lower vibration. There was a really cool clip somebody sent me today, actually, and I want to work out to share it, because I'm not on TikTok. I'm not really a fan of that, which is fine, but he sent me it via Instagram. And it was, the guy was like just interviewing some people on a radio station, and he said something along the lines of, what if I was to give you $1 million right now? $1 million. And they were like, yeah, the two of them, yeah, we take that, thanks. And I said, okay, perfect. How about if I gave you $10 million? And they're like, yeah, how would that feel if I put $10 million in your hand right now, no strings, I was just giving this away? And they were like, yeah, amazing. He said, but a caveat, what if you weren't able to wake up tomorrow? Would you still want that 10 million? I was really powerful. Would you still want that $10 million? They were both like, no. So he said, why aren't we waking up in gratitude? We want to wake up tomorrow.
Yeah.
We don't want the $10 million, we'd rather wake up. And he was talking about being an attitude of gratitude. If you're in that space of gratitude, more things will come to you. If you're in that space of, I mean, I said before the call, I'm loving it out here. It feels like it's like my home, because the energy I'm in here, and the people and the atmosphere and the vibe, and I can't explain it. The nearest explanation, I guess, is Ibiza, because I've been going there for many years. You land off, you jump off the plane, but you land in Ibiza, and there's just this vibe and this energy. I've been there a lot of times. So have you been? I think you've been, haven't you?
Yeah, quite a
Yeah.
number of times. I love the White Island, I really do. Fantastic
But
place.
that's it, isn't it, Paul? Do you understand? The minute you get off that plane, you've got this energy. We can't explain it, can you?
Totally, totally. It's just the
And
vibe. Fantastic.
yeah, yeah. So it's like this here. So I think for anyone listening, I think if you can just be somewhere that aligns with your energy, and it doesn't mean you need to suddenly jump on a plane and go to Ibiza or Vietnam. You can if you want. Both places are amazing. But do something that aligns with your energy. Hang out with people who are going to pick you up. Don't be hanging around with people who are like talking to you like shit, or taking them, that they aren't friends really. I mean, I know it's difficult with your family, you can't choose them, I get that, but do something, that take yourself off somewhere and do something that feels good for you, because that is going to align your energy. Yeah, weeks in Ibiza are great. Like, just didn't think we'd be talking about Ibiza on the call, but that's all good. Listeners, go to Ibiza, it's amazing if you've not been.
Good advice. I like that advice, and it's funny because when you start talking about it, you just visualize it in your mind, don't you? If you've been there, it becomes
Yeah,
automatically. I'm like, oh, I need to go back soon. I well, as you know, and I think you've really explained why mindset's important to you, and I guess what I'd be interested in is waking up each and every day, which you kind of said with the $10 million, or would you wake up the next day? How would you describe your mindset? What's your mindset from the start of the day, and how do you maintain your mindset?
So yeah, good question. I like that, and a lot of clients will often ask that, because a lot of clients I see, aren't in a good place. Where the minute people wake up, I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling down. I'm feeling low. I'm feeling, all this kind of stuff. So for me, yeah, I always like to. I think how we start the day. So the first 5, 10, 15 minutes of our day are crucial. Why? Because we're in the mindset, we're in a very relaxed state. So we're in a very suggestible state. So when we just wake up, we're in what's called kind of theta alpha brainwave, or we're in a much kind of lower brainwave. So everything at that point of the day goes in. So the last thing we want to do is pick up the phone, check WhatsApp, check emails, check LinkedIn, check Facebook, check Twitter, no, because that check the news, please. Whoever's listening to this, and you're regularly checking news updates, or anything like that, I always say just switch those notifications off, limit your access to the news. I don't watch the news at all. But anyway, how we set up our first kind of 5, 10, 15 minutes of the day is crucial. So for me, I meditate every morning. So first thing, when I first wake up, I'll do some meditation. And this doesn't need to be 3 hours sat on a hill like a yogi. This can be like this morning, 10 minutes for me, 10 minutes. It can be anywhere between 10 minutes and half an hour. And people often say, oh, I've tried meditation, but it doesn't work. It's like me coming to Vietnam and saying, I've tried to learn the language. I've tried to say one word, it doesn't work. I'll just not try now. You've got to, you've
Yeah,
got to give it a bit of time. But what I would also say for anyone that's listening, listen to some guided visualizations as well. Like you said, they can really visualize Ibiza.
yeah,
If you're struggling just to kind of sit there and notice your breath and just feel in that space, I mix it up a bit. So I listen to really nice guided visualizations, meditations. So that's the first thing that I do. I haven't done, just because I've been away last few weeks, I've struggled to find anywhere. Actually, I've done it a couple of times, but I like to do yoga. So I'll do yoga at least 4 or 5 times a week, whether it's in here, just on my own for kind of 20 minutes or so, or I'll go out. There's somebody local to me. I'll go and see him once or twice a week. And of course, some tapping. I love to start a day with tapping, because it just gets me into that mindset for the day. And I think, as I said earlier, before we started, the way my lifestyle works now, I can do more in the day because I'm working kind of afternoon into evening, which works really well for me because I'm on, European time. So, and I think staying in that place,
yeah.
it's it's not easy. I get that. So we all have bad days, good days, me included. I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. And, if I am doing, I'll just take some time, or I'll, get on a call with a friend, or, take myself off somewhere, just have some time for me, because we can't be, on it 24/7. Or if I've had, a lot going on with work, then I'll speak to my supervisor and have a conversation with him. So everyone's different, I guess. But for me, all that is really important. And just like I wake up in the morning in gratitude, I wake up and I'm like, wow, like coming back here today, it's just being in these wonderful places. And you can do that anywhere, it's because I guess what happens with our mind, in our mind, with our mindset, is then a complete reflection of what goes on outside of us. Because a lot of people said, oh my gosh, like, you're so lucky. No, this is nothing to do with luck. This has been planned.
Yeah,
First of
yeah,
all,
yeah.
some of it, I had a lot to do before I came. There's a lot going on. But also, again, like you, visualize. I had everything on my vision board. I used to live in Manchester prior to here. All the stuff there. I've not quite got the suite in the Emirates first class yet, but that is on the vision
Coming.
board. We've not
It's
got there
coming.
yet. It's coming. But
Yeah,
yeah, joking aside, but yeah, seriously, all that on my vision board with Vietnam, what I want to set up. So I want to set up a high-end wellbeing centre, wellbeing retreat out here. That's the plan. And yeah, all that there that I'm visualizing, every day. And that for me, I think is really important, but I would say to anyone that's listening, don't beat yourself up, don't think, oh my gosh, I can't do that, or I'm struggling to do that once a day, or like, that's okay. This takes time. This has took me, a number of years to do this. Just do something that works. Don't see it as a chore. See it as like, I love yoga. I see yoga, it kind of sets up the day. I don't think, oh my gosh, I'm going to do, like, I enjoy it, I enjoy going to class, enjoy doing it myself. So make it something that you enjoy. Don't think, oh, I've got to do that and it's a chore. Do you know what I mean? Make it
yeah,
a routine that you like, if that makes sense,
yeah. It does totally. And I kind of look at it and go, if you start the day off with gratitude, it just creates the right vibration for the day anyway, the right energy. So, so,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you talked about your mindset there, and you talked about some techniques that you use as well. And I know you said, there's that conversation that helped reframe your mindset, but have there
Yeah.
been has there been any other people or books or anything that's helped you with your mindset over the years that's additional to that conversation that you had?
Yeah, I'll just talk about that in one sec. There's just something else that's popped into my mind. So I was just saying there about the morning kind of I was gonna say ritual then, the morning, whatever we
Yeah,
want to do in the morning first thing. And this doesn't, like I say, this doesn't need to take hours, 5 minutes or something like that. And a client of mine, he was doing some great stuff anyway. He was doing some, meditation, his business goals, and this kind of stuff. And he, as part of that routine, that's what I'm looking for. As part of his routine now,
yeah,
he'll go into my YouTube and he'll do one of my tapping videos. So for him, he's got his goals for the day,
yeah,
his meditation, his tapping. And he kind of says, if I drop off and I don't do that for like 3 or 4 days, I really notice a difference. So that's the other thing as well. I think once you start to get into this and you enjoy it, it becomes, to think when it drops off, if that makes sense. Because you'll
yeah,
notice
yeah.
it, notice a dip in your mood, don't you, I guess, so yeah, so books. Well, there's a couple of interesting ones on books actually. Something I'd like to share because so yeah, I love anything by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I think you've read a lot of his work as well. Is that right?
Like Joe. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I love a bit of, and interestingly enough, I was saying to a client the other day, because he's aware of all his work, he's read his books. And I said, oh, we're talking about one of the week-long advanced retreats. So, I'm definitely, my plan is to go on one of those, but I would do the work prior. I said, well, manifest that. I was saying this to my client. Well, he's like, yeah, we'll manifest going, And then something just popped up on my Instagram stories a day later with Joe Dispenza doing his like week-long retreat, just like some little snippets. And I said
yeah,
to my client, I said, I don't want to go to, no disrespect, Bognor or Blackpool. I said, I want to go somewhere. He does them in like places like Costa Rica, doesn't he? And Mexico. I said, I want to go. And he's doing he's doing one somewhere like that. Now, Colombia is at the moment. So anyway, going off and talk, yeah, but I love anything by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Bruce Lipton. I like his work as well. I've been fortunate enough to see Joe Dispenza on 4 separate occasions. I actually manifested seeing him in the Bahamas once, which was very interesting.
oh, wow.
He was there the same 4 days that I was there, and he was talking in an ashram for 3 or 4 days, and it was a bit of a mission to get a boat and a car and walk, but I got there at like 5 o'clock in the morning to see him speak, and it was phenomenal. So yeah, I like him even though. Interestingly enough, my first ever it's a little story I want to share with you. My first ever self-help book, about 12, 13 years ago, was a book called Sumo, Shut Up and Move On. Have you heard of it? By Paul
Yeah,
McGee?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, I've been a really big fan of his for a long time. Obviously, I was living in Manchester prior to coming here. Which part of Liverpool are you in? Are you?
I'm across the water, so I'm on the dark side, so I'm
I
Birkenhead.
thought I thought you were going to say. I wasn't too sure. Yeah, over the water. Yeah. Anyway, Paul McGee's from Warrington. That's his kind of base, but he flies all over because he's a motivational speaker and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah, I was just years later, I was just doing some training at a place in Warrington, and we kind of broke for lunch, and there was a few people, other people doing training on the day, and these people having lunch, and I looked over and I thought, is that Paul McGee over there? Oh, yeah, it is. I was like getting all excited, went into fan mode. And anyway, we had our kind of afternoon break. We were all, in these various training rooms in this hotel. And we broke for coffee, and then people were going back to the rooms. And then Paul just appeared to I said, hello, Paul. I knew him. And I said, oh, I love your work. Can I have a selfie? Typical me. He was like, yeah, great. So interestingly enough, fast forward a few years, we've kind of stayed in contact. I don't know if you saw, but I did. I set up something called Success Mindset TV in 2020. Again, what 2020 gave me, and I interviewed some amazing people on that channel. I've left it for a bit now, but you're encouraging me to start it up again. So I interviewed some like world leaders in tapping and emotional freedom techniques. Someone called Dr. Dawson Church, who's lead researcher. He's done research with Harvard University. The amount of research he's conducted is phenomenal. So I interviewed him. I interviewed somebody called Brad Yates, and he's had over 40 million views on YouTube. He's phenomenal. And I approached Paul and I said, would you interview for my channel? Yeah, of course, that's fine. So we were all a bit quiet in COVID, weren't we? He had the time, bless him, which was amazing. So we've stayed in contact. He messaged me before latter end of last year. I think, can't remember when it was. Anyway, we're nearly in February next month, which is March. He's coming out to Vietnam to do some training, and we're going to meet for some dinner because he's staying where I live for coincidentally on the weekend. He's staying in a hotel down the road, so we're going to meet for dinner and a catch up. So that's a bit of a interesting, I guess, story, the way that's worked out. Again, it's what we, like I said earlier on, Paul, and you know this, but I just guess to anyone who's listening, surround yourself with that gratitude. Surround yourself with people who big you up, who stand in your corner, who get you, who motivate you, who inspire you. I was having a catch up with another friend of mine on, I think it was Monday this week, and she was laughing because I was in Bangkok. It was about, I think, 6-7 p.m. my time. I'd finished work for the day, and for her it was like morning. And I said, what, I'm going to get a beer. So we were on a video call. She was like eating a breakfast or whatever it was and a coffee. And bless her, she wrote a post. She does some as you. She's a leadership coach. She's amazing, actually. And we met through like business circumstances years ago, and now we're really good friends. And she was doing some mentoring for me, actually. And she wrote a post on LinkedIn to say I'm the most inspiring person she knows. It was just, we were on the phone for like 2 hours, but again, just wonderful. She has got my corner. She bigs me up, I big her up. These are the people I want in my corner. It's not always been the case, Paul. Years ago, when I wasn't feeling too great, I didn't feel, I was, relationships, friendships were not bad friendships, but friendships where, I don't know, the other people weren't making much of an effort. And anytime, like when I set the business up, people kind of dropped off. I want people who are there fighting my corner. And I think anyone who's listening who wants to step up a gear and wants to, how am I going to, step up with my mindset? What can I do differently? Who you surround yourself with is really important as well,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all connected, isn't it, I guess,
Yeah, and you mentioned some great names there, from Joe Dispenza and his story. If anybody's not heard of Joe, he's well worth looking into. Paul McGee, I've seen live, fantastic speakers. So some great names there that you've pulled out. Well,
Yeah.
as you know, Janine, we were talking about this before we started recording around, you've done quite a lot of traveling, obviously had an interesting career. Have you got any funny stories you could share at all that come to mind?
I'm just trying to actually think, of yeah, I can't think off the top of my head. One will probably come to mind. But as we said, before the call, I used to be cabin crew, but it was before the days of we had mobile phones, but they were like bricks.
Yeah,
But I think then back then I was so glad because I've done a lot of travel. Funny story might come to mind. But I was so glad I did that job then because we weren't on phones all the time, checking your Instagram, checking this, checking that. And it was
yeah.
it was good to do that job back then when you didn't have all those distractions. Um
It's amazing, isn't it? Because when you look back, as being the generation of the mobile phone never existed when we went out. You go out, you'd have a good time. If someone was trying to get hold of you, they'd actually have to go to the venue that you were in if they knew where you were, or they'd have to wait till the next day. It's like our life was so different to the way that we run our lives now. Most people
yeah,
are not off the mobile phones at all, or
yeah.
it's a different world, isn't it?
I won't tell you a funny story, but I'll have to just following on from the IB, for example. I did get to meet Idris Elba once there.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Yeah, how was
Phenomenal.
he?
It's not that funny. It's just the funny in the fact that I was out there before COVID. I was in an amazing club. So my friend DJ's out there. I used to know him from many years ago. He's been on my channel actually. Paul Reynolds. He's a great DJ.
Yeah,
He's DJs in a club called High, as was Space. So it was named the #1 club in the world. And yeah, I was in Ibiza with a couple of friends back in 2019 before COVID. And yeah, he got me in on the guests. That was amazing. So we went in and
amazing space. Yeah, brilliant.
fabulous, fabulous. I used to, so he actually played on the closing night of Space. He played on the terrace. He played like a 6-hour set. So yeah, like Paul Reynolds is amazing. So again, I'll send you a link to these interviews because it was pretty interesting. And yeah, so they're in the DJ space, if you like. They've got a bit behind them. So they've got these like tables and everything else like that. And yeah, so my friend was DJing and I was going to see him and obviously Idris Elba, who was on afterwards. And the security were really nice. They just said, "Oh, just to let you know, when Paul finishes, his people need to go, then Idris's people come in." We were like, "Yeah, that's fine." And I'd had a couple of beers by this point, so and we were just having a great time, and didn't think anything else of it. And then literally, like my friend and I were just sat on this table, kind of behind Paul DJing. There was the crowd and everything else in the club. And the people came over, they came dashing over, clearing. "We're so sorry, we just need to clear this table now. Idris is on his way in." And we were like, "Oh." And I was thinking, I am not missing this opportunity.
Don't blame me.
No
Yeah, yeah,
way.
yeah.
Honestly, I was like, Idris Elba's on his way in. But I thought this was going to take a while. Paul, it was literally a minute or two later.
He's there. Yeah.
Group of people. So everyone was being
Wow.
pushed out the way. Everyone was like a little sea moving out the way. Like Idris came over and shook my friend's hand, like shook it, like to move him out the way, kind of thing. And I was just like sat there, and I was like, "Hi," like, and I just went into fan mode. You know what? He was so lovely, and I
Oh,
bit like, well,
fantastic.
there's a theme going on here. I don't think we're talking about selfies. And I was like, I know this is really annoying, but can I have a selfie? And he was like, "What's your name?" I said, "Janine." Yeah. And you know what? He was so lovely. And I couldn't get my phone to work. And he was like, "Yeah, you've done this before." I was so nervous. I was like, bang. And I managed to get a picture. I said, "Thank you so much. Really good to meet you." And you know what? He was so nice. And the staff were like, "Oh, he's really nice. Doesn't like that sort of thing normally." I said, "No, he was great." So yeah, him and my friend, they did back-to-back DJ for 20 minutes. We watched them in the VIP at the back, and
Yeah.
so that was not terribly funny, but it was a
Oh, that's brilliant.
great
Brilliant
night for
story.
me.
It's,
I
I,
can
I,
highly, yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
he's a DJ himself, isn't he? He's
Mm-hmm.
been in some big movies as well. Obviously plays Luther. Well, what a great
Yeah.
story. What a
So
great.
that was an amazing. That was a day I won't forget anytime soon. So yeah, it was a really 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 cool night. So yeah, all thanks to Paul, bless him. But yeah.
Brilliant. So bringing the podcast to a close, Dan. And what would be your last piece of advice to the listeners?
I guess what I'd always say is So I think there's still a big stigma around mental health. And I always say we've all got mental health like we've got physical health, you know? So if you wanted to get physically healthy, you'd maybe change your diet up a bit or do a bit more exercise or go to the gym. It's the same with our mental health, our mindset, you know. I think that stigma just needs to go. And what I would say to anyone listening, if you're listening now and you resonate with any of what we spoke about today, and you're feeling that you're struggling through life a bit, you're feeling that, you know, I'm not feeling happy with life, or I'm not in a good relationship, or I don't feel confident, or I feel it's the same old shit, you know, where you just feel negative and down and fed up, or there's some anxiety and stress, or whatever it is that's holding you back. Don't just carry on like that. You know, there's always help out there, because like the work you do, I guess, Paul, and the work I do, I you know, before I came to Vietnam, I pretty much sold everything. A lot went in charity. I did some charity nights at my place, and, you know, made some money. That just to, you know, I had to sell my car, obviously, so I needed to put the car in the garage to get MOT and service. Now, I could have spent 2 or 3 years learning to be a mechanic, but I've got no time to do that. So I'll pay the guys up the road in the garage 500 quid. They sort my car out, then I'll sell the car. So I like to liken, I guess, what you do and what I do as that specialist in that area. Yeah. And it's about working with, you know, just seeing what's out there, somebody who can support you to move forward. Because I'm telling you now, you do not need to stay like this.
Yeah.
You can stay and feel the exact same way that you felt yesterday and the day before that and the day before that and the day before that. You can stay exactly the same. But is tomorrow going to be any different? Or is 6 months' time going to be any different? Or a year going to be different? My answer would be probably no, you know? And it's okay to just even have a conversation with somebody. Because I'm very, very passionate about men's mental health. I'm very passionate about men looking at, most of my clients are men, whether that's corporate or individual, because, you know, suicide is a killer, unfortunately. It's you know, it's the biggest killer in men under the age of 45. So have a conversation with someone if you're not feeling too great. You know, there's professionals out there. I would always say, if you're not feeling too great, things can change. It might not feel like it right now. Like, I didn't think in a million years back then, when I was on the floor, I couldn't face my life. I couldn't face my work. I couldn't face anything. I was literally on my knees. I wouldn't have thought in a million years I'd be having conversations like this with you now. You know, I remember 6 months down the line, I was pretty much finishing off with this therapist, and, you know, he kind of turned around to me one day, and I was saying something. He just kind of looked at me, and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I can really see you teaching this stuff, like, down the line. I can see you." And I went, "What?" Because this man is amazing, by the way. He's changed the lives of thousands. He's world class, and he's now my supervisor and mentor, you know, and he's phenomenal. He's in his late 70s. He still does the work. He still, you know, works with clients. And that coming from him to me, I was like, "You're like, really?" Like, I couldn't get my head around it, you know. For him to have that, you know, that kind of confidence and that understanding that this is what I was going to end up doing, I couldn't see that in myself. So it just takes, I didn't want to go, by the way, that day. I was all ready for cancelling. I was like, "Oh, I'll just go home and drink a bottle of wine. I'll be fine." Because those were my poor coping strategies back then, you know. So I would say you can always make a change. It's just the small steps. And I've seen it time and time and time again. It's so worthwhile to do that. You do not need to stay like this. There is hope. There is, you know, there is an opportunity to make a change. And then tomorrow will be different. And then imagine what 6 months is going to be like, and 12 months. And I always say, if I can do it, anyone can, because I was in a mess 10, 12 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the best bit of advice I could give anyone that's listening, you know.
And if someone wants to reach out to you, Janine, what would be the best way of doing that?
So yeah, so as I say, my company's called Change for Success. So that's my website, changeforsuccess.co.uk. I also do a lot on LinkedIn. You can reach me there. On Instagram, Janine Mitchell. Again, yeah, Change for Success. So whatever feels good. And if anyone wants to just have a conversation or ask me about tapping or how I got to the place that I did, I'm always happy to have a conversation, even if it's just to give some strategies, some tips, some ideas, some advice. always happy to do that. So if you like to get in touch, please do so. No problem. You can just drop me a message and we can, because I'm still available on Zoom, on WhatsApp, all that kind of stuff. Even though I'm here, it's most of my clients reach me, yeah, by email or WhatsApp. So it's pretty straightforward.
Brilliant. Well, Janine, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on. Really insightful. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for having me. Good to see you. Thank you, Paul.